Is he fitting this? Okay, good. You're looking good.
I guess I could have recorded it the other way.
Look at all the lonely people. You want me to introduce myself and do this whole thing? You want me to direct the whole meeting here?
Yes, go for it.
Welcome tonight, everybody. Really glad to be here. Thank you for blessing me with the opportunity to come and talk about the Carenet Fatherhood program. I'm Dan Rosecrans. I am the coordinator, fatherhood coordinator. Not a coordinated father, but the fatherhood coordinator for the Carenet Ministries. A lot of people kind of question, why would a pregnancy center be involved with dads? What's the deal here? I mean, we want to save the babies and we want to take care of the moms. Dads don't generally care, which may or may not be true, but they are a part of what's going on here. This is my little dime philosophy about that, because I was around in 1973 when Roe v. Wade was legalized by the Supreme Court. A lot of us as Christians really had no idea what we were fighting, what we needed to fight, what we needed to do. Our immediate response was, we have to save these babies, and we did. We do. And so we went out and we talked about save the babies, you know, don't kill your baby, don't abort your baby. We want to save these babies. Well, that's great, but here's a woman who says, well, this is my body, my choice. That's how they refuted that whole aspect of it. Now, we know that it's not just her body, it's also the body of another one. So we decided to, let's work more on saving the mom, because if we save the mom, we save the baby. And so we focused a lot of our time and our energy on moms, rightfully so. But one of the things that we found is that 86% of the women who are pregnant and seen by Carenet are not married. But 60% of the women who are seen, who are in that pregnant state, the first person they tell and consult with is the father of the baby. 60% of the time. That means if we can reach that man as well as that young woman, that young man and that young woman, then we have a better chance of saving that little baby. So we feel it's extremely important as a pregnancy center to get involved in working with men and helping them understand their role as a father. One of my favorite things to do when we're talking to, when I'm talking to a young man whose girlfriend or wife or whatever is pregnant, is I ask him, well, how do you feel about being a father? Oh, it's going to be great. Or, I don't know, I'm a little concerned about when I'm going to be a father. And I love it when they do that. They fall right into the trap. Because my response is, you are already a father. You are a father right now. And you have a responsibility. In my little mind, the role of a man can be summed up in a couple of things. That is to provide and to protect. We want to do whatever we can do to provide for the woman that we love and the children that we bring into this world. We want to provide for them. The Bible says it itself, he who does not provide for his own is worse than an infidel, worse than a fool. And then we want to protect. And one of the things that we see, statistically speaking, about children who grow up without dads, and we'll cover this again in a moment, is the fact that they are not safe in this world. They're hardly safe in this world in any stretch of the imagination, but they need a dad to help protect them. One of our sister ministries, Carenet Ministries, says that many of the single women we serve tell us that they're considering abortion because they don't want to raise a child alone, or that they do not have the support of the father, or they fear that he'll leave them if they have the child. Over the years, many fathers have told us that they think this is her decision, and because they didn't have a father growing up, they don't know what their role should be. As our male clients, advocates share information about the baby's development and the risks associated with an abortion procedure, fathers gain knowledge and information that enables them to speak from a place of leadership in the relationship. So what you have is this vicious cycle. She doesn't feel like she's got support from the man who got her pregnant. She doesn't feel like she can provide for this child because the man who got her pregnant has turned his back and is not there. Or she thinks he's not going to be there. He has believed what he's heard all his life. Her body, her choice. Excuse me, but your body had a part in this, and that child is as much yours as it is hers. And so we have to ignite a fire, so to speak, in those young men to say, I'm a dad, this baby is mine, I want to help with that decision. But we bought into that lie that it's her choice, it's just her choice. And I've heard that so many times from young men. Well, you know, it's her choice, whatever she decides is what I'm going to do. Lead. You know, I was always told, lead, follow, or get out of the way. Well, in this case, I don't really want to say that to a young man, but I want to say, lead, for crying out loud. Be the man that you think you are, that you want to be. Be that man. Take some leadership. Step up to her and say, whatever happens to us, I want you to know that I am there to help support this child. I will always support this child. Saying that to her and then acting on it is extremely important. By the way, it's interesting to note that when a woman goes in for an abortion, over 80% of the time, and it's a high 80, over 80% of the time, that relationship dissolves and disappears. So the very thing that the woman didn't want to have happen, I don't want to lose him, by going and having the abortion, that is exactly what has happened, what will happen over 80% of the time. It's a pretty high statistic. That's a pretty real problem. I don't like to read. I like to talk, but but there was another thing in there that I think we need to examine, and that is the fact that a lot of young men grew up without a dad. I think even more hurtful, in my opinion, is when a young man says to me, well, yeah, my dad was there, but he wasn't really there. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I know exactly what you mean. Dad who emotionally disengages, dad who doesn't have time or the temperament to take care of his children, to pay attention to them, to play with them, to spend time with them. That's a young man who's hurting just as much, but in a different way than the man who grows up without dad. But there are so many young men who grew up without their fathers. It just tickles me pink when I talk to a young man who says, well, I say, what kind of a dad, what kind of relationship do you have with your dad? Oh, my dad was great. He was always there. Took me to all my ball games. He taught me how to do this. He taught me how to do that. We went fishing together, hunting together, played catch together. He helped me learn how to fix cars, whatever the case may be, something like that. And I always tell them, you are way ahead of the majority of your peers. Simply by virtue of the fact that your dad was present, you have a huge head start as a new father. Let me go through some of this, because we know that kids who have dads at home are better able to control their emotions. They're less likely to have emotional and behavioral problems. They are less likely to be aggressive. They are 4 times less likely to have a mood disorder like depression or anxiety. That's just by having dad present. Now, look, I'm not saying that every dad is perfect, every dad has to be perfect, and sometimes there are dads who make these statistics null and void by the way they abuse and misuse their children. Make no doubt about that. But a dad who works at it, I'm not saying a perfect dad, because there is no such animal. By the way, I'll back up and say that I have 8 kids. Right? So the youngest is older than the 3 of you sitting right here, okay? And you too, youngster. The youngest is older than, she's going to be 25. And my oldest is her, well, really close to being 40 something, but I wouldn't say that, because you're recording this and she may get a hold of it. So I have 8 children, 4 boys, 4 girls. People always said, are you Catholic or Mormon? And they said, no, I'm just a Baptist having a good time. And so I just but I love my kids. They were fantastic. But I was not a perfect father. My dad was not, he was a good dad, but he was not a perfect father. I have never met a perfect father. The thing about it is we often think, well, that dad must be right on. He must have it all together. And he will tell you, oh, I am really struggling to know what to do with this child. I don't know how to get through to this kid, whatever the case may be. We all struggle. So there are no perfect fathers. The kids who have dads at home have better physical health. They're less likely to be obese, 2 times less likely to die as infants. That one caught me. How can that be? But if dad is there and providing, that means that the financial resources are there to at least make sure the kid eats. And eats properly. He's also, there's a huge connection between that emotional and that physical bond that takes place. And so just by being present, your child is 2 times less likely to die as an infant. And your child's more likely to be breastfed. Why not? Why not so? Because mom doesn't have to go out and work all by herself. Hopefully dad's taking care of that. I'm old school. I don't want to sound like Ozzie and Harriet here. But dad's helping take care of things. It doesn't mean mom can't, but maybe she can make the baby her priority and she can relax a little bit more, and it's easier for her to breastfeed that child, which is extremely important. And the child is 2 times more likely to be fit. There is a reason God created men to be such physical animals. And I never really thought about this, but when my kids were very, very little, when you got the infant baby, and as a dad, you're really careful to make sure you're holding that baby properly. You're snuggling that baby real close, and as they get a little bit older, you'll maybe hold them up a little bit. But there comes a point in time when you just instinctively know it's okay to go, whoa! There's no bells, no buttons, and moms will never do that. There never comes a time in a mother's life when she goes, hey, I think I'll throw my child. But there is a time when a dad goes, okay, we're ready. I got you. Never dropped a kid, and I never broke any of his necks. I was always really sure when I knew it was okay. So dads are just instinctively more active. That's a generalization, but all generalizations are true to a degree, I guess. But anyway, it's a generalization. Dads are pretty much more active. The way they play with the kids, right? Wrestle, and I had a thing where we'd be up against a couch, and I'd say, okay, you got the football. Here's a 2-year-old. He's coming. You run to me, and I'll tackle you. Well, okay, I'm not going to tackle him like I'm in the NFL. Couldn't even if I wanted to. But it's just like grab them, and they just had a blast. And they get up and do it again, do it again, do it again. That's the kind of thing that dads bring to the table, making those kids extremely active. And there's a big benefit just in that. Kids who have dads at home have healthier relationships. Think about that. Dad can help kids make good decisions about relationships. I remember my dad, he wasn't the most engaged father in the whole wide world, but he would say, you think that's the kind of person you ought to be hanging around with? Ooh, how dare you question my wisdom as a 13-year-old? He was right to question my wisdom as a 13-year-old. He affects what his daughter looks for in a boyfriend or a husband. Ladies, it's extremely important. You want to know something, and this is another aside, and I'm not going to charge you for that, okay? This is free. If you're dating someone, or you're interested in someone, and you have the opportunity, watch how he conducts himself in the overall group dynamics. But most importantly, if you can, watch and see how he treats his mom and how he treats his sisters. Because if he treats his mom like dirt, I guarantee you, 100% certainty, without a change that comes from God alone, I'm not saying it can't happen, that man's going to treat you the same way. Same thing can be said about a young lady that you might be dating. You watch and see how she interacts with her father and with her brothers. Now, I'm not saying that they can't joke and tease and and you know, but does he respect her? Does she respect and her father, or does she treat him disrespectfully? I just keep using that word. Anyway, watch how and see your the person that you might be interested in treats the opposite sex parent. So I'm a dad, so I can't resist. So take your time. There is no hurry here. A little investigation goes a long way. A father helps show his son how to treat women. Now, my 4 sons, there's a couple of them who probably came close to going to jail, but that's a whole other story. I don't know. But I made sure that they understood when I knew they could understand something, they don't hit girls. You don't hit your sister. You don't strike out at your mother. You don't hit a girl anywhere. Unless your life is in imminent danger, you do not hit that girl. And then if your life is in imminent danger, do what you have to do to take her out of action. No problem with that. All right. I think that's extremely important to teach our young men these days. There's too much domestic violence. It's one of the things that without a dad, these guys are growing up with, and some with a dad, because this is what they see. This whole aspect of violence in a relationship. We have to, as fathers, drive that penchant for violence out of those children. We have to drive out of them the inappropriate sexual desires that they might have. We have to help them get out of that. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't go into the military and serve. I've got 3 out of my 4 sons that are in the military, have been in the military, and served because they want to defend this country. But if they ever hit their wife, they know that they would hear from me. And I've already told their wives, if you ever have a problem, let me know. I'll take care of it. And I haven't heard from them. A child whose dad is there, talking about healthier relationships, is less likely to have sex at an early age. They are 7 times less likely to become pregnant as a teen. And isn't that what we're trying to do? We're trying to help stop this rash of teenage pregnancies. One of the best things that we can do is put a dad who is connected with who works to connect with his kids into their home. That's what we want to do. Like I said, I could bore you with statistics. Are you bored yet? These kids who have dad home feel more safe and confident. And they are safer when dad is with them. I cannot tell you how I looked out, how many times it was natural instinct for me to watch out for my kids. We'd go someplace, and it didn't matter whether it was all 8 of them, or 4 of them, or 2 of them, or just 1 of them. I'm constantly doing a head count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, they're all there. 1. Yeah, he's still here. So I was very important to me, make sure my kids were safe. There used to be a racquetball club over where the Wyoming, what was used to be called the Wyoming Mall. You're all too young to know that now. All you know is that there's a Walmart there and a Furs or something like that. But there used to be a racquetball court there. And my 2 oldest daughters were teenagers at the time, and they wanted to go over and watch a friend compete in a racquetball tournament. I had no problem with that. So my 2nd oldest daughter is standing there, and they took with them my oldest son, Ben, who was, oh no, it would have been one of the other ones, my youngest son, Samuel, and he was just like 2 to 3 at the time. So my daughter, Erica, is standing there holding Samuel's hand, and all of a sudden she feels him pulling away. And she just kind of pulls back, and then feels him pulling away again. And she looks down, and she sees a man's hand uncurling her fingers, and he already had his hand, had an arm on my son's wrist. His intention was to take that boy away. Fortunately, Erica realized what was going on. She looked at the man, and he just kind of stepped back and kind of chuckled nervously, and then walked off and disappeared in the crowd. Kids are not safe in this world without someone to protect them. And that's Dad's job. That's something dads need to pay real close attention to. Kids are less likely to use alcohol and drugs, abuse alcohol and drugs, if dad's in the home. That's just a statistical fact. They're far more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol without dad there. And they experience a depression that leads to use and abuse. They do better in school. Kids with dad in the home, more likely to get A's. Didn't work for me, but it works. That's another generalization, but it works pretty good. 2 times less likely to repeat a grade. 2 times less likely to drop out of high school. Less likely to have behavior problems in school that leads to suspension or expulsion. Same son, Samuel, he's in the 7th, 8th grade, something like that. And every year, I told my kids' teachers 2 things. Number 1, you only believe half of the things they say about me. I only believe half of the things they say about you. All right, that's fair. We always agreed on that. And I said, number 2, if you ever have problems with my kid in your classroom, call me. I'll be right here. I worked less than a mile away from where my kids were going to school, and I had a pretty flexible schedule. So one day I get a call from my son's teacher, and she says, Dan, having a little problem with Samuel. I said, I'll be right there. I get there within about 5 minutes, and I was the athletic director at the school, so I could walk wherever I wanted to walk. I didn't have to worry about that. But I walked back and I kind of hung around the corner, and I watched my son cutting up and laughing and joking in class until I came around the corner. That was priceless. I wish I had a phone camera at that point in time, because his face turned from jovial to I am in such trouble. He behaved the rest of the day. I sat down right behind him, put my arm around him, and said, I think I'll stay here and sit in class with you. What do you think? He said, I thought you might. Okay. And I did. I stayed with him the rest of the afternoon to make sure that he didn't cut up and mess around anymore. Dads will do that. Now, lest you think that my children were the only ones who misbehaved, when I was in elementary school, I made a regular path to the principal's office. I knew him by first name. I'd just walk in, put my feet up on his desk and say, okay, Maurice, which paddle do you want to use today? And he had a variety of paddles, and sometimes he let me choose. But it never failed. The moment I got to my dad's feed store, because that was like less than a 1 mile walk, I got to Dad's store afterwards, and he said, what, you want to tell me about why you were called into the principal's office again? And that got worse paddling. I eventually learned to behave. Now, whether or not you're in favor of corporal punishment, in my case, it worked. It was a really good deterrent. But kids are more likely to do better in school if dad's involved. Matter of fact, I'm going to add to that. It doesn't matter whether he goes to parochial school, public school, charter school, private school, home school. It doesn't matter where, that dad needs to be involved in that kid's education. Knowing more than just what grade you in. Right? You got to know a little bit more than that. So he's less likely to be poor. You know, with dad and mom's resources there, it's, you know, with a mom with children, I don't know if any of you grew up with a single mom, and I'm not going to ask that question, but that's hard. That is hard. And I'm not saying women can't do it, because I know women can, and they do. But it wasn't intended to be that way. It wasn't meant to be that way. Kids who are with dad are 4 times less likely to live in poverty. 4 times less likely. They are 2 times less likely to experience poverty as adults. And they're more likely to stay out of trouble. I already kind of hit on that. So at Carenet, we feel the need to educate dads who are coming to our center about the reality of their presence, how they are needed. And that's one of the things that I emphasize and emphasize. I am so glad you're here. I'm so glad you care enough about your child to be a part of his or her life. What kind of a dad do you want to be? Well, most of them will say, I want to be involved. And I don't think I've ever had anybody say, well, I just kind of want to be left alone and I don't really want to do it. They all say, I want to be involved in the life of my child. Good, great, you came to the right place. Let me help you. And so we have We have in-center videos that they can watch, or we can get them involved in watching things online on their phone or on their computer, whatever works best for them. And that's how we want to reach them. We want to teach them. But then we continue the relationship, and I think that's the most important thing, is that relationship that they have then with somebody there at the center. It starts by making them feel welcome at Carenet, but then it goes beyond that. Not only feeling welcome, but feeling wanted. And again, letting them know just how important they are to the process. So I've given because the majority of our volunteers are female. We are building a group of good male volunteers at Carenet now. And so we try and make sure these women know, make these guys feel at home, make them feel comfortable, make them feel wanted, make them feel like they're a very important part of the process, because they are. It's amazing to me the number of the guys who come in there and they don't expect anything. I just love that part of the job. And you sit down with them and they go, what is this? Hi, I'm Dan, I work with the men here. And I just thought maybe you and I should sit down and talk. And they don't expect that, because they don't expect that we're going to work with them. They expect that all we're going to care about is the woman. And when they find out we care about the men, it makes a difference. It makes a big difference. Let's see if there's anything else I want to cover here. So we try to affirm the man. We do everything we can to involve the man, include him in this, invite him to come into what's going on, and encourage him in his role as a dad, because it's all important. You see, men have been charged over the years with a lack of will to stand by their woman. And here you got a bunch of guys, majority of the guys who've grown up, or at least half of them who've grown up without a dad in the home. They have no idea how to be a dad. They don't know. So I'm kind of the mind that it's not really a lack of will. Many times it's a lack of skill. And so what we are concerned about at Carenet is making sure we give these young men the skills to be the successful father, the most successful father they can possibly be. That's what we're about. That's what we're doing. Any young men who are interested, want to know a little bit more about some of the videos or something, let me know. I like to have you have been a dad to work with us, because it gives you kind of a bit more of a perspective, but that's not impossible. One of the other things that we're doing now, and you initially reached out to Julie Winkler, our mobile medical unit director, and I hope you'll get her back in if you haven't heard from her. We've just started putting together a group of young people who go out on the sidewalks, who are our compassion crew. And they're making a difference out there on the sidewalk. It's tough work. It's hard. It's not for everybody. I think everybody ought to go out there at least once and see what it's really like, particularly at Curtis Boyd's Southwestern Women's Options, and see these young women walking in there fully pregnant. It's a wake-up call. But some of you can come out there and get the training and stay out there, and we'd invite you to come out there. So when she comes, I'm sure she'll tell you more about that. Another thing that Carenet in general has coming up is our Laugh for Life event, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow night. I'm going to make it the 25th at Legacy Church on Central, the big Legacy. It's free. Just show up at 7 o'clock that evening. I'm going to get there a little earlier than that. It starts at 7 o'clock on that night, Friday night, 2 weeks from tomorrow night. Again, it's free, and anything that you can give, want to give, it goes to the mobile medical unit to help continue its ministry, which is very vital. Anything else that you would like me to cover? Any questions that you might have? Things I've covered.
Could you explain more maybe about, you said you give them the skills, they need to be successful fathers, so what does that mean? You said the videos, is there anything else you do, or what do these videos cover?
The videos are very important. They talk about different things like what does it really mean to love your child? Time is what your child wants. Your kids don't want toys and Disneyland. I mean, they wouldn't mind that, I suppose, but if they just had Dad and his presence, that would make all the difference in the world for that child. So that's like one of the lessons. There's other lessons about how to get along with the mother or the baby, whether you're with them or not with them. How to co-parent if that's what you need to do. They're just talking about the different skills that a father needs in order to help his child along. But I think that the the most important aspect about that, Teresa, is the relationship that we build with that young man, and talk about some of our experiences, our failures, because I've got plenty of them, and some of the things that we did right along the way. So it's that really it boils down to relationship.
And how do you maintain the relationship? You said you keep it going. How do you do that?
How do we mean?
How do you like keep him coming back?
That's the
How do
toughest
you
part.
just keep that relationship going?
That is the toughest part. If you guys can give me insight on that, man, I'm listening, because it's the toughest thing to, and it's heartbreaking, because I'll sit there with you guys who say, yeah, okay, I want this lesson, and I send them the lesson, and nothing ever gets done. We have to be intentional. It's one thing, women will come to Carenet, but Carenet has to go get the men. We have got to be more intentional and reach out to them more than we ever did in the past. And that's a different look for us, but we're starting to get that. But you've nailed the toughest piece of that, and that is to keep them coming. So, like I say, you have any ideas, you got my card. Shoot me some ideas. I'd love to have some input on
Think
that.
about it.
Please.
Does anybody have any more questions?
I don't.
I don't. Thank you so much.
Glad I covered
Tony,
everything.
That was inspiring. That was beautiful.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now, are we off camera now?